December 1987, Detroit, Michigan. A 57-year-old black woman is sentenced in absentia in an 848, a super kingpin statute case. The same thing Frank Matthews was gonna go down on, the same thing to get you life, no parole. She may well have been what we could call the female Frank Matthews because, like I said, she was sentenced in absentia, which means she was absent. She wasn't there. She was out on bond. Her name was Marian Lampkin. She was 57 at the time in 1987. Poof, never seen again. So who was this woman and what was her ties to the streets of Detroit? Let's go back. Eddie Jackson of Motown Mafia fame, along with his second-in-command, Courtney Brown, go to prison in 1977. They had been probably the biggest drug crew on and off since 1970 in the city of Detroit after they replaced John Claxon, yet another black kingpin from Detroit who, poof, disappeared. He was on the DEA top 10 most wanted list, left Detroit in 1969 or early 70, never to be seen again. So Frank Matthews certainly wasn't the only one. Richard Wakefield was in the same article about the men who sell dope, which appeared on the front page of the Detroit paper in the early 70s, which was about the 8 biggest drug rings in Detroit. Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown were one.
Then they went on in the story to list some other big fellas in the town. Lester Ramsey, Jesse James, that LeBlanc guy, John Claxon. And then they went on further to talk about the East Side 7 and West Side 12. And that was the first time I remember as a kid reading his name, Richard Wakefield.
You're under constant surveillance. There have been all kinds of stories. There have been all kinds of stories about your alleged connections with the underworld drug market. What's your reaction, Mr. Jackson?
Well, as far as the connection, that's 100% false.
Again, the question, how could a man at the age of 29, who just 6 years ago was earning something like $6,000 a year, acquire so much in so short a time?
Well, I think you asked me before about I worked in the pool room. I want to straighten that out. I own the pool room.
We're right next to Eddie's next to us. You got the Cadillac, you got Mercedes, you got another Cadillac, you got his crowd pleaser Rolls Royce.
Yeah, and he would throw money.
From reliable sources, guys that rode with him, it was nothing. If you caught him on the right day, he might throw $40,000, $50,000 out the window.
Wakefield and Eddie are cellmates. Wakefield had been a big guy. First time I remember reading his name was as a kid when the Detroit News did that big expose on Pops and Eddie.
And then there was a crew they were referring to as the West Side 7, led by a guy named Arnold Pretty Ricky Wright. Richard Wakefield was a part of that. Richard Wakefield's home was right next door to Eddie Jackson's in the early 70s, and America's at the time #1 coolest, best suburb. Southfield, Michigan was voted America's best suburb around that time. Wakefield went to prison in about 72 for tax evasion, and then he got a Thai smuggling conspiracy case while he was already in prison for tax evasion.
Didn't hear the name again until circa March of 1983. Eddie was released from federal prison. As soon as he come home, it became obvious that while he was locked up, him and Mr. Wakefield had been planning a major power move upon his release. Marian, who seems to be Richard Wakefield's street wife or street woman, but Wakefield was already a established international trafficker. Him and the big man then plotted. Brothers in the streets was playing small games with Marian, and even though she had A1 quality work, they was playing with her on the price, telling her this ain't working, just being slow on the payment. They was like, okay, well, check this out. Once Eddie get home, just let him run the show. And they did.
Sounds more like she was a plug, this black woman in Detroit, and that Wakefield was just a customer of hers. And he tells Eddie Jackson, because Eddie Jackson's getting out, hey, the bag is here. She's selling it, but because she's a woman or whatever, people are playing games. She's making money, but if we put you on point, we know it'll run perfect. So Eddie Jackson gets out, and it does run perfect. And
so Wakefield is still doing time from the case in the 70s. So Marian is out, his woman is out, she got the bag. Big man come home, he take over running the bag. They lighten up the streets $30, $40, $50,000 a day, but then 3 weeks of the big man being home.
The drugs from the heroin from Marian Lampkin, brokered through Richard Wakefield. He was giving it to a few people, but a lot of it was going to some of the remnants of Young Boys Incorporated to sell on the street. And they swept the streets. They made tens of millions of dollars in like a year.
It was that skag, that China white, 93% pure. They didn't do it in Keys over there in Thailand. You buy it by the pounds. So they had 40 pounds. Big man put a 3 on it, 120 pounds. Then they breaking it up into quarters.
He said, my name is Eddie Jackson. I say, pleased to meet you. I've heard a lot about you, sir, because I respect you, because my grandmother, I heard my grandmother talk about this man. I heard you can move product. I said, I can do a little something, you know what I'm saying? He said, well, listen, I want to give you 50 quarters, 1,000 a quarter, that's 50,000. I'm just meeting this man.
Mm-hmm. I believe Pep said when he got it, he was then putting a 50. They cleaned the streets up.
And he say, I'm gonna give you 50 quarters. What can you do with them?
After setting the groundwork for lots of money to be made in Boston, Pep returned to Detroit and he started working with Eddie Jackson, who was fresh out of federal prison after serving about 9 years on a 30-year term from the late 1970s that we featured in the Motown Mafia documentary.
I say, yeah, I can handle it, man. I can move it. I say, but Mr. Jackson, just like I said, Mr. Jackson, I'm gonna tell you right now, before you hear in the streets, I'm leaving town. I'm going to Boston. I'm not gonna be here, so I don't want nobody to tell you think I ran off with your bag.
Man, if I'm 14, 15 at the time, he might have been 19.
Well, he was already...
He was already knee deep in it. I mean, yeah, because by the time I run into him, he'd already went out to Boston for WW. Yeah, he'd already worked for Butch Jones, Raymond Peoples, and Wonderful Wayne, WW. By the time I came around him, he already had that underneath his belt and on his resume.
Listen, I took 1 gram of heroin and put 58 grams on it, and I was getting 9s on the ratings, because then the niggas couldn't even make it. If I would have put a 59 on it, I would have killed people.
And the most interesting sub-story of all occurred, well, we just know this happened from the streets, and Eddie Jackson and Courtney Brown knew this happened, but it never made it into the indictment. The indictment only had those 3 loads I mentioned. At some point during one of the mule trips that, again, didn't even make it into the case because Miss Lampkin didn't put Eddie Jackson or Richard Wakefield into the case at all. The feds did not have them in the case, even though we now know they were selling some or all of the dope. Well, Eddie Jackson was.
Marian was organizing a group of people on a church mission, a missionary mission, that were going over to Thailand to do missionary work. While they were in Thailand doing this missionary work, they would each swallow about a pound or a pound of a half of this skag, or the China white, put into balloons, reinforced with surgical glove tape, reinforced again with a balloon, because if this balloon would open up inside of a human being, they would instantly die of an overdose, because it's pure. It's 93% pure. I mean, that much of it can overdose a person. As it was recounted to me, when they would get, they pick up the church people from the airport, they'd all go to their house over there off of, I believe it was like 6 Mile in Wyoming. Each woman would then take a thimble of shampoo. If you swallow shampoo, it causes for your body to immediately reject everything in the stomach, causing for a clean of everything inside of your stomach. Wipe off the balloons, open it up, voila. They ran that for a year. And the reason why it all came to an end was on one of those missionary trips, one of the women had a substance abuse issue The thought of that pure product inside of her and her jonesing made her make a horrible decision. So somehow I believe she must have believed that she could control her and tried to do some old-fashioned, put your finger down your throat, thinking that she just one balloon, which give her access to the product. Hindsight 2020, obviously people with substance abuse issues are known for making irrational decisions, and anybody's been around a person with a serious Jones know that when the monkey ain't on their back, they can be as normal and rational thinking as anybody, and then all of a sudden once that monkey jumps on their back, their ability to make a rational decision goes out the window. The only thing they can think about is getting that monkey off their back. And obviously that's what happened, because this woman went and attempted to get a balloon out of her stomach and caused the balloon to burst, causing her to immediately. That, of course, caused for everybody on the plane to be detained. As it was told to me, the other 20-some-odd women who were on that flight, pretty standard procedure when something like this, you put in a room where the toilets don't flush. One way or the other, what's inside of you is going to come out, either through the back or the front, and there is nowhere for it, whatever comes out, to go away because the toilets don't flush. They're in there, all the drugs are found, and as it was told to me, I think each woman got like 20 years in Thailand, sleeping on rice paddies, as it was said.
None of this was even in Miss Lampkin's indictment. Her indictment was really only her, George Kelly, and maybe the courier, one or two couriers. This is all a secret. So even though we always say we only talk about things been adjudicated, well, everyone's deceased or already was punished for something else and is long past the statute of limitations. But 20 or so mules, as best we know, were caught with 10 bricks before they left Thailand, did a bunch of time, and this was all orchestrated by Marian Lampkin and Richard Wakefield from his Milan jail cell.
Now, Miss Marian, after this debacle with the flight, she's indicted, but it seems she was given bond, or she was able to pay her bond. And she bonded out.
Marian Wakefield gets indicted in 87. By that time, Eddie, well, she gets sentenced in 87. The crimes, she, like I said, was 84. So they were probably building the case on her while Eddie was running through more heroin that she had come in. Eddie gets indicted himself in 85, ends up getting 10 or 15 years.
The man who told me this story, Mr. Eddie Jackson Jr., what up, though? I know I'd had personal vision of her stash, because once him and his pop were over there, and she said, go up to the room and get you some weed so you can go hang out for the night. Plus, he knows what the count was that was getting turned into her.
She disappears with at least $5 million in cash.
Low number, she left with about $5 million cash.
Some of it was supposed to be Wakefield's, but I mean, I'm sure he made a lot of money.
So yeah, she joins the very short but exclusive list of people who have been involved in this Motown Mafia thing since 1969 of John Claxon, Frank Matthews, and Miss Marian. All multi-kilo dealers, all who left with over $1 million and have never been seen again. All who I think to this day are still on the federal most wanted list.
Frank Matthews was not the only one to do it. He's the biggest we know about. But Marian Lampkin, a woman in Detroit, black woman in Detroit, was a huge heroin importer.
It's two things that the audience has to remember. Don't everybody get caught, and some actually get away.
Big Boss Film Works. Shout out to Eddie Jackson Jr. Al Prophet, American Dope.